Hi guys, thanks for joining us on today's video. Today we've got in a 2016 Audi Q7. I'm going to be talking about the problem that's killing these newer 2014 onwards Volkswagen Audi Group engines using the 3 litre TDi variant. So there's a problem that's killing these engines as little as sort of 50,000 miles upwards. But if you've got one of these vehicles, you want to be getting this sorted as soon as possible. So if you've got a 3 litre TDi Volkswagen Audi Group 2014 onwards, then you've got the new Euro 6 engine, and it has this emissions fix made by Volkswagen Audi Group that's reducing the oil pressure to lower emissions, which is then causing premature wear and tear on the engine, and actually causing engines to seize as low as sort of 50,000, 45,000 miles. We've seen reports of these engines seizing. So that's the problem. To know if you've got the actual car, it depends on the year, the engine size, but yeah, 3 litre TDi 2014 onwards. This actual example we've got here is a CRTC engine code, so Charlie Romeo Tango Charlie. If you want to know whether your engine, see what your engine code is, on a Q7 you can open the boot, go to the back of the car, and you'll see just under here a sticker, and on there it'll say what engine code you've got. But yeah, it's something that you definitely want to get sorted, because this problem is affecting the all these 3 litres. So what we'll do, we'll have a look at some live data on here, show you what the issue is, and we're going to fix this via remapping. So we're going to remap the engine, adjust the maps. Well, this is the engine controller, the engine ECU. We're going to adjust the maps contained in here to adjust the oil pressure, to make sure there's plenty of oil pressure for the engine, so it's got good lubrication and isn't causing premature failure. So if you want to know a bit more on whether your engine is this type of engine, we're talking the 3 litre 6-cylinder, and it's the EA897 onwards engine code. That's the one that's affected, or them engine codes from that generation are affected. So this is on Wiki, if you're on the Wikipedia. If you could type in EA897, and it'll go through what engine you've got here. But yeah, it's on this engine and a few others. Pretty much anything 3 litre TDi 2014 onwards it's got this issue. Is where the oil pressure is controlled obviously by the engine ECU. This is a dynamic changing of oil pressure, depending on the temperature and the RPM of the engine spinning. It will change how much oil pressure there is. What we're going to do is show you. This is stock at the moment. We haven't adjusted anything. This is before the fix, before the fuel pressure fix. I've got a diagnostic tool on it, the Think car. And on that, you can use any diagnostic tool to do this check, anything that's got live data. We're going to have a look at the oil pressure, run it through some RPMs, see where it is and see what the issue is. We're going to adjust the maps and then write the new file back. That will then increase the oil pressure and fix the premature failure of from this issue. So it's well worth having it checked. I've got a 4 litre TDi myself on a SQ7, so I'll run some checks on that. It might also be on that as well. It probably will be, to be honest, because it's an emissions fix for the whole generation of diesels from 2014 onwards. So it's well worth having it checked. A mechanic will be able to do the check-in for the actual diagnostics to see what the live data is, but you're going to need a remapping technician, someone that can work with the engine ECU here, a remapper, to make the adjustments within the ECU. So it is a service we carry out here at Chesterfield, and we have installers all over the UK. So if you've got anyone who's needing it doing, just give us a shout and we'll put you in the direction of the right person. So I'll pause the video here, load up the diagnostic tool, and we'll look at some live data. So I'm connected to the OBD. We've got the ignition on for the vehicle, and yeah, we're going to go into ECM, engine control module. which is the engine electronics. So that's that engine ECU. That's the one that's dealing with the oil pressure. So I'm going to go through to the next screen, go on to read data stream. So we want the live data. We're looking at data block measurements number 1. And we're going to select a couple of items in here, so I'll pause the video as I select these up, and these are the ones that you will need to select, or your mechanic will need to select, to check the current oil pressure of the car before, just to make sure it's not. I already had it done. It's very unlikely. Not many people have actually fixed this issue. Some have had replacement engines, and others haven't had the issue yet. It does depend entirely on how it's driven, how often it's serviced, and everything else. But for around about 80% of the time, especially if you're driving it steady and keeping the RPMs quite low, the oil pressure is remaining quite low. If you're increasing the RPMs and getting it into the higher RPMs, your oil pressure is actually increased at the higher RPMs, and that's got a bit more protection at that point. But for about 80% of the time, especially if it's an automatic, if you're light on that throttle, it's staying in the low RPM changing gear, and you're not getting to that higher RPM, then you're going to spend about 80% of the time at the engine at risk and 20% of the time of it not being at risk. But yeah, it's something that you definitely want to get done. The older vehicles didn't suffer from it. The older vehicles, the older 3 litres, didn't have the same issues because they didn't have the same restrictions on the emissions. This is something that's been put in by Volkswagen Audi Group to try and get around the lower emissions restrictions. By doing this on your own vehicle or having it done on a vehicle, you'd still pass emissions on your MOT. The MOT emissions are completely different to your creating a new vehicle and selling it within the European Union emissions level, so no issues there. Some people say, well, why isn't this done as a recall? Why isn't this done as part of a recall? And that's sometimes because the manufacturer has to first meet the emission regulation to be able to sell the car in the country. If that actually causes an issue mechanically and that issue isn't happening in warranty, then that's not usually going to be a problem for them. So I mean, this vehicle's done 72,000, so it's done quite a lot. This issue can happen anywhere from 50 upwards, as low as 50. Some vehicles are not getting any issues even at 70,000. But yeah, by this point the vehicle's out of warranty, so if it was happening at 12,000 miles, 8,000 miles, it might be a recall, something that the manufacturer wants to fix. But say this has happened at 50,000 miles 4 years later, it's out of warranty anyway. The new engine on this car would be about £14,000, so that's obviously a good benefit to the manufacturer, not something that they'll particularly rush to fix. Any manufacturer would rush to fix if they're going to get paid £14,000 for a new engine. So yeah, we'll select these things up and I'll resume the video at that point. So some tools you'll have a search in the live data, so we're going to type in oil, and what I'm looking at here is the oil temperature, and I've selected oil temperature here, oil pressure set point, and oil pressure and oil temperature sensor too. So pretty much anything that says oil temperature or oil pressure is what we're selecting. Once you've selected the oil pressure and oil temperature sensor maps, live data, we're going for RPM. Again, I've selected these 3 RPMs. Then I'm going to press OK. So we've got the RPM, we ain't got the oil pressures. We'll just go back. So I'll select those oil pressures up and get them all on one screen. 1 second. So I've just selected these 2 just so we can keep it clean on a graph. We've got RPM in the orange, which is on 0 because the engine's not running, and we've got the oil pressure on 983 HPA, So just under a bar, about 1,000, just over 1,000 HPA is at 1 bar. So yeah, it's just running around about a bar. That's just atmospheric pressure, so that's nothing to worry about. So there's no oil pressure when the engine's switched off. It's just atmospheric pressure as such. So that can be ignored. So we can pretty much deduct that down to 0. So when we start the engine, we should see obviously the RPM will go from 0 up to wherever the RPM is, and the oil pressure should raise. So we'll start the engine now. So foot on the brake, start it up, and we'll see straight away RPM shot up and the oil pressure shot up. So it shot up to just under 2,000 HPA, 1,800. So that was already at nearly 1,000 HPA anyway, so it's sitting around about 2,000. So we can deduct the 1,000 HPA that was originally there, because that just says atmospheric pressure. So the actual oil pressure is about 1,000 HPA, which is about 1 bar. We usually work in bar, so we'll just call it 1 bar. So there's 1 bar of oil pressure added to the atmospheric. So that's what the engine's doing, adding 1 bar of pressure, and the tick over nice and low actually, 600 RPM, so quite a low RPM on this one. So we got 1 bar at tick over, which is okay. It's not like it's fine. It's more so what happens once we rev the vehicle up. So let's raise the RPM. So pick it up to 1,200 RPM, 1,300 RPM. So it's not increased the oil pressure really at all. It's actually gone down, if anything. Try and get that steady on. There you go. Yeah, so it's gone up quite a lot there. So we're at 1,200 RPM. We're at, no, it's not. It's shot up initially, and if we're keeping that around 1,300, as you can see, steady throttle, that's not gone up. That's still 1 bar of pressure, so it's not adding more. You can actually hear a slight rattle from the engine. Not sure if it'll pick up on camera, but I'll increase the RPM a bit more. It's definitely a rattle from the engine there. 1,500 RPM. So at 1,500 RPM, again the pressure hasn't increased. We're still at 1 bar, which was at that tick over at 600. So we doubled the RPM, and the oil pressure's not increased. We're now up to around about 2,000 RPM, and we've got a slight increase at 2,100 RPM. We've got a slight increase at 2.2 bar, so yeah, about 1 point. It's only about 200 millibar of pressure has increased, even though we've gone from 600 RPM to 2,100. Most people at this point will be changing gear. The gearbox will change if you're driving soft around here, or say we pick it up to 2,500. So the noises seem to, yes, rattle's still there slightly, but at 2,500 RPM we've now got an increase of oil pressure. We'll see if that drops down. We'll just hold it there for a second. Yeah, it's dropped down again. Our revs have dropped down a little bit. It's hard to keep the throttle steady on this one. So yeah, at 2,000 RPM we've got an increase of the oil pressure. It's hard to say where it will settle, but we've got an increase of oil pressure. It's gone from 1 bar atmospheric, and it's increased it by 3 bar by the looks of it. So yeah, that's up at 2,500 RPM. If you're driving it steady, you'll see, obviously this is taking a bit of time for the pressure to come down. but we've returned to pretty much it tick over 2000 HPA. Yeah, so about 2000 HPA is where it's settling at tick over, and that doesn't increase as we increase them revs. Still pretty much 2000, so we've doubled the RPM now from 600 RPM to 1200 RPM, and we have no increase in oil pressure. So this is part of the issue. As you're driving it steadily, even though we've doubled the RPM, we're not increasing oil pressure. So let's pause the video there. I think we've seen enough really on the live data. I realised the last bit of the video was a bit hard to follow, so yeah, I've just got some screenshots I've just redone. So we've got the benchmarks, 600 RPM. Well, 600 RPM, we've got basically 1 bar of pressure because we did up the first 1000 HPA, so we've got 1 bar of pressure on tick over. We increase the RPM to 1000, still got 1 bar of pressure. We increase the RPM to 1500 RPM, still got 1 bar of increased pressure. So we've gone from 600 RPM to 1500 RPM, still got the same pressure we had at tick over. Gone from 1500 RPM to 2000 RPM, pretty much just got a slight increase in pressure here, so 1.1 bar. So there's been a 100 millibar increase for a 1400 RPM increase, so hardly anything really. So this is problematic. 2000 RPM on this car. This is an 8-speed gearbox. It will change gear around here, so at this point you've got no protection. Moving up and to 2300, should definitely change gear by now really, and we're at 1.88 bar increase. And hitting the red line on the standstill rev limiter on this car is 2500 RPM, and you can see there's a massive increase now at this RPM. So this is not so bad, this isn't so bad, but that's a big increase from here to here, and the RPM's only just gone up by 200 RPM. So there's a set point in the original factory mapping when it gets to probably around anywhere between 2300 and 2498, where there's a big step up in the oil pressure as the revs have gone up. So yeah, but like I said before, at this point, and at this point, before that, your car would have changed gear, meaning you're not getting that oil protection that you need, oil pressure that you need. So we're going to adjust the maps now and write the new mapping into the ECU. So we're going to use the auto tuner to write the file in. So we're going to write a tuning file, and it's this one. That's the original file that we took from the vehicle, and this is the oil pressure correction stage 1 remap. So the customer's opted for increased performance at the same time as fixing this oil pressure issue. So we're going to write that in. Yes. So that's just uploading the file to the server now. Uploading the file to the server. This is the auto tuner tool. We're writing that file in with that tool. So it's uploaded it to the server. Once it's uploaded it to the server, it can then start writing. As you can see, it's at 0%. So I'll pause the video here because it's going to take a bit of time to write the file in. This is the actual map that we're adjusting in the actual ECU. So that file's been read out. That's the map that's been adjusted, and we're writing that file back through the OBD port. So we've got OBD extension going into the OBD. Always make sure you got your battery support unit connected, positive and negative, supporting this ECU through the programming to make sure there's no issues. The customer's going to have to get the rattle looked at on the engine. Maybe it's caused damage already, but at least we're preempting any further damage by writing this map in. So yeah, we'll check on how that's getting on the mapping front. So that's just finishing writing. It's at 97% at the moment, 98. So that's just writing the last bit of data in. 99. So that's it. So it's validating ECU and it's at 100% now, so that's finished. So writing time on this one was 13 minutes and 38 seconds it taken to write that file in. So what we're going to do now, now that's finished writing the file into the ECU, is disconnect everything and let the car shut down. We always, especially after writing the file to it, we always like to let the vehicle shut down. That can take around about 5 minutes, so we'll lock it up and leave it for 5 minutes just to let it settle. So finished writing it, let the vehicle shut down, reconnected the Diagnostic tool to check post-fix to make sure all is good, and just mainly to show you guys we know it's good because we did the map and wrote it to it, but just to show you guys the comparison before and after. So them screenshots I took on the tool earlier, I took a picture on my phone just so we can compare side by side the two figures. So on the phone, on this is before the fix. On here is live data from the vehicle that we're plugged into after the writing of the file to it, so you can see the difference. So before, on the phone, it's 0 RPM, we had 989, which is exactly the same. So nothing's been changed there, nothing needs changing there, so therefore that's exactly the same. Let's start the vehicle up. When we started the vehicle up, we went up to 600 RPM and 2001, basically 2000 HPA. So let's start the vehicle up. So as we start it up, we see the RPM shoot up, and before it was sitting at 600, which it's at now, 600, but instead of being at 2012 HPA, we're at 2600. So a massive increase on tick over from where it was at the beginning. So the next check we did was at 1000 RPM. We was still at basically 2000. So let's bring that up to 1000 RPM. So 800. So let's have a look. Throttle is sensitive as anything. So we're about 1000 RPM here, as we were before. But you can see now at 1000 RPM, we're at 2787, where before it was just at 2000. So yeah, that's a massive increase. Next one was 1539, so bring it up. 1500. Right, 1500 is about there, and before was still at 2000, and now we're at 2800. So good increase there. Next one, 2000. Right, so at 2000, before we was at 2.177, and now at 2000 we're at nearly 3000, so 2952. So again, a big increase. The last one was the red line, which was 2300 is the next one. So 2300, we're now at 3.8, where before we was at 2.8. So a massive increase, 1 bar of extra pressure. And the red line, so that's foot to the floor now, doesn't go any further in my Crocs. We're at 2,500 RPM, before was at 4.387, and now we're at 4.3, pretty much the same. So the top 2,500 RPM hasn't been increased. So we've not increased the oil pressure any more whatsoever than the maximum stock value, so it's not created extra pressure or strain on the engine. The maximum value of oil pressure that we're achieving is exactly the same as it was before. It's just as you're stepping up through the revs, even at tick over, if we compare them two again, just as it's sitting there at the traffic lights on tick over, or you're sitting there at any point, we've got an increase there of half a bar of pressure. So we didn't get this sort of pressure, 2,500, till let's get that back up. Yeah, we didn't get this sort of pressure, 2,500. That wasn't seen until yeah, that was, we're getting that roughly around 2,000 RPM before, and now we're getting that at 600 RPM. So you got so much more protection with that added in. I'll end the video there because we've dragged on a bit, but yeah, I did want to show you all the live data. I didn't want to just say we've done it, there we go. You can now see the proof before and after, and that's what's made the video a bit long. But yeah, it's something we can do not just for Audis and not just for Volkswagen Audi Group, Mercedes, BMW, other vehicles as well, Peugeot, Citroens, Fords. We do quite a few Fords actually for the same issue. Most vehicles Euro 6 onwards, so sort of 2014, 2012 onwards, these vehicles have put strict emissions on, which has caused the manufacturers to do things like this. So if you are feeling that your vehicle is at risk, then yeah, just give us a shout. What I've also just noticed is we had the horrible rattle, 1,500 RPM, which is gone. Which is, yeah, normally they don't rattle. Normally we're doing this fix as a we're doing this this edit as a preemptive fix, but this car before, I don't know if the video will actually pick it up on the audio, but 1,500 RPM there was a horrible rattle, and that's gone. So the engine's running smoother already. So hopefully the video did pick up that audio before, and then you'll hear what I'm hearing, but this is just sounding so sweet in comparison to where it was before. Right, I'll end the video there, and thanks for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.